The studio froze. Every person in that room, the audience, the crew, even the producers behind the cameras, stopped breathing for just a moment. Dr. Phil stood center stage, holding a manila envelope in both hands, staring down at it like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Across from him, a mother sat with her hands covering her face, shoulders shaking. Next to her, a son leaned forward, eyes locked on that envelope, knowing that what was inside would change everything. For 40 years, a lie had been buried, and now in front of millions, the truth was about to surface. This is the story of betrayal, denial, and the moment Dr. Phil broke protocol to reveal a secret that a family had been running from for decades. 3 weeks earlier, a 42-year-old man named Michael reached out to the Dr. Phil show with a desperate plea. He had spent his entire adult life searching for answers about his identity, about why he never felt like he belonged in his own family, about why his mother would change the subject every time he asked about his father. Michael's message to the producers was simple but haunting. I think my mother has been lying to me my entire life, and I need Dr. Phil to help me find out the truth. The producers reviewed Michael's case and saw something they didn't see often: decades of documented attempts to get answers, medical records that didn't add up, family photos where Michael looked nothing like anyone else, and a mother who had built walls so high that even her own son couldn't climb them. Dr. Phil agreed to take the case, but he made one condition clear to his team. If we're going to do this, we do it right. No games, no ambushes for ratings. We find the truth and we handle it with the care this family deserves. The taping day arrived. Michael walked onto that stage with a mixture of hope and terror in his eyes. He had waited his whole life for this moment. His mother, Patricia, followed behind him, defensive posture already locked in place, arms crossed, jaws set. She agreed to come on the show, but her body language said everything. She did not want to be there. Dr. Phil greeted them both, his tone measured, his eyes already reading the room. He had done thousands of shows, but this one felt different. He could sense the weight of what was buried here. The conversation started slow. Dr. Phil asked Michael to explain why he felt disconnected from his family. Michael's voice cracked as he described a childhood where he was treated differently, where his mother seemed to hold him at arm's length, where every question about his father was met with anger or silence. "I just want to know who I am," Michael said, tears forming. "I deserve to know the truth about where I came from." Patricia's response was immediate and sharp. "You know exactly who you are. You're my son. Why do you keep trying to destroy this family with your conspiracy theories?" Dr. Phil leaned forward. "Patricia, let me ask you something directly. Is Michael's biological father the man you told him it was?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Patricia looked away. "I don't have to answer that." Dr. Phil's expression shifted. Anyone who had watched his show for years recognized that look. It was the moment when Dr. Phil went from host to truth seeker, when the protocol and the production schedule became secondary to the human being sitting in front of him. But what happened next is something that changed the entire direction of the show, and it started with a phone call that came during a commercial break. During the break, a producer rushed onto the stage and whispered something into Dr. Phil's ear. Dr. Phil's face went from focused to stunned. He stood up immediately, walked off stage, and disappeared into the production area. The audience sat confused. Michael looked terrified. Patricia looked like she wanted to run. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The warm-up comedian tried to keep the audience engaged, but everyone knew something major was happening behind the scenes. When Dr. Phil finally returned to the stage, he was holding that manila envelope. His expression was different now, heavier, more somber. He didn't sit down. He stood in the center of the stage, envelope in hand, and looked directly at Patricia. "Patricia," Dr. Phil said quietly, his voice stripped of any performance, "I need you to understand something. What I'm about to share is not a gotcha moment. This is not about ratings or drama. This is about your son's right to know the truth about his own life." Patricia's face went pale. Dr. Phil continued. 3 weeks ago, when Michael contacted us, we asked him to provide a DNA sample. With his permission, we ran that sample through several databases, and Patricia, we found matches. The air left the room. Michael's hands gripped the arms of his chair. What does that mean? Dr. Phil turned to him, and for a moment, the cameras didn't matter. It was just a man trying to help another man find his truth. Michael, Dr. Phil said gently, you have half-siblings, 3 of them. They live in different states, and none of them knew about you either. Michael's face crumbled. So the man Mom told me was my father is not your biological father, Dr. Phil confirmed. And based on the DNA, your biological father is a man your mother knew 40 years ago, a man she has never mentioned to you. Subscribe and leave a comment because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. The studio audience gasped. Some covered their mouths, others sat with tears streaming down their faces. This wasn't scripted drama, this was real life unfolding in real time with real consequences. Patricia stood up. You had no right to do that. You had no right to go behind my back. And Dr. Phil's voice cut through, firm but not cruel. Patricia, stop. Just stop. She froze. Dr. Phil walked closer to her, still holding the envelope. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've sat with thousands of families, and I can tell you right now, with absolute certainty, that the damage you have caused by keeping this secret is far greater than whatever truth you were trying to protect him from. Patricia's defenses cracked. Her lip quivered. You don't understand. I was trying to protect him. From what? Dr. Phil's voice softened, but his question was relentless. From knowing his own identity? From having relationships with people who share his DNA? From understanding why he never felt like he fit in? Patricia sank back into her chair, hands shaking. Dr. Phil sat down across from her, the envelope still in his hands. Patricia, I'm going to ask you one more time, and I need you to be honest. Not for me, not for the cameras, for your son. Who is Michael's biological father? The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. And then quietly, Patricia spoke. His name was David. I met him at a summer job when I was 19. We had a brief relationship. When I found out I was pregnant, I panicked. I was engaged to someone else. The man I eventually married. The man Michael thinks is his father. I never told David. I never told anyone. Michael's voice broke through, raw and shattered. So you let me believe a lie my entire life? You let me think I was something I wasn't. Patricia looked at him, tears finally falling. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought if you never knew, it wouldn't matter. Dr. Phil leaned back, processing the weight of what had just been confessed. He glanced at the envelope in his hands, then at Michael. Michael, Dr. Phil said, I need you to hear me. What your mother did was wrong. It was a betrayal of your trust, of your right to know your own story. But I also need you to understand something. Fear makes people do irrational things. Your mother was terrified of losing the life she had built. That doesn't make it right, but it makes it human. Michael wiped his eyes. What's in the envelope? Dr. Phil held it up. Information about your biological father, David. He passed away 7 years ago, but your half-siblings, they're alive, and they want to meet you. And what happened in the next 60 seconds is something no one in that studio or watching at home could have predicted. Michael reached for the envelope, but Dr. Phil didn't hand it to him immediately. Before I give this to you, Dr. Phil said, I need to make sure you're ready. Because once you open this, once you start building those relationships, your life will never be the same. This is a door that doesn't close. Michael nodded slowly. I've been searching for this door my whole life. Dr. Phil handed him the envelope. The camera stayed on Michael's face as he opened it, pulled out photos, documents, a handwritten letter from one of his half-siblings.
His hands trembled, his breath hitched, and then for the first time in the entire taping, he smiled. "They look like me," Michael whispered, staring at a photo. "I look like them." The audience erupted, not in applause, but in something deeper. Collective relief, shared emotion, the recognition of a man finally finding a piece of himself that had been missing. Dr. Phil turned back to Patricia. "Do you understand now? Do you see what you took from him?" Patricia nodded, unable to speak, tears streaming down her face. Dr. Phil stood up. "I'm going to tell you what happens next. Michael is going to connect with his half-siblings. We've arranged for counseling for both of you to process this. And Patricia, you're going to have to live with the consequences of your choices. But here's the thing. There's still time. There's still a chance for you to be honest, to be present, to be the mother Michael needed you to be 40 years ago." He turned to the audience, then looked directly into the camera. "For anyone watching this who's holding on to a secret, who's lying to protect themselves or someone else, understand this: the truth always comes out, always, and the longer you wait, the more damage you do. Don't let fear steal years from the people you love." The taping ended, but the story didn't. 3 months later, Michael met his half-siblings in person. They embraced like they had known each other their entire lives. They shared stories, compared baby photos, and laughed at how similar their mannerisms were. Michael later told producers, "For the first time in my life, I feel like I belong somewhere." Patricia entered therapy. She began the long, painful process of understanding why she made the choices she did and how to rebuild trust with her son. It wasn't easy. It still isn't, but she's trying. Dr. Phil later reflected on the episode in an interview. That envelope wasn't just paper and ink. It was identity. It was history. It was the key to a man's entire understanding of himself, and when I handed it to him, I watched a person transform in real time. That's why I do this work. The manila envelope now sits in a frame in Michael's home. It's a reminder of the day his life changed, the day the truth finally came to light, the day he stopped living in someone else's story and started writing his own. But there's more to this story that most people don't know. A week after the show aired, Dr. Phil received a letter. It wasn't from Michael or Patricia. It was from one of Michael's half-siblings, a woman named Sarah, who had watched the episode and felt compelled to reach out. In her letter, Sarah described her own journey. She had grown up knowing she had a half-brother somewhere, a child her father had never met, a secret her father took to his grave with profound regret. She wrote about how her father, David, had mentioned Michael's mother only once years before he died during a conversation about life's biggest regrets. He had said, "There was a woman I loved once. She disappeared. I found out years later she'd been pregnant. I tried to find them, but I never could. I think about that child every day." Dr. Phil shared this letter with Michael during a follow-up session that wasn't part of the original taping. When Michael heard those words, that his biological father had wanted to know him, had searched for him, had carried that loss his entire life, something shifted. The anger he felt toward his mother began to transform, not into forgiveness, not yet, but into understanding of how one person's fear can create ripples of pain across generations. Patricia was present for that follow-up session too. When she heard about David's regret, about his lifelong search, she broke down in a way she hadn't during the original taping. "I took that from both of them," she whispered. "I took away their chance to know each other because I was scared of my own mistakes being exposed." Dr. Phil looked at her with that expression he reserves for moments of profound truth. Patricia, that's the first time I've heard you take full accountability. Not, I was trying to protect him. Not, I thought it was for the best. Just the honest admission that fear made you steal something irreplaceable from two people who deserve better. It was in that moment, off camera, in the quiet aftermath of revelation, that the real healing began. Not with dramatic confrontation, but with the simple, painful acknowledgement of harm done and opportunities lost. Michael and his half-siblings have since created a tradition. Every year, on what would have been David's birthday, they gather together. They share stories about the father they never met, about the man who spent 40 years wondering about a son he never knew. And they honor Patricia's courage, however late it came, to finally tell the truth. Because here's what Dr. Phil understood that day in the studio, what he's built his entire career around. People are messy, families are complicated, and sometimes the worst thing someone does to you comes from their own fear, not their malice. That doesn't make it okay. It doesn't erase the damage, but it makes it human. And humans, when they're willing to face their mistakes, can sometimes find their way back to each other. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Because the truth doesn't just set you free, it gives you back the parts of yourself you never knew were missing. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it gives you the family you were always meant to have.